Alright guys, gals, and everything in between, so I teased that this was gonna happen. I've never really done one of these before for a movie, at least as far as I remember, so I'm just really excited to bring this video to you. So let's talk about some spoilers. So if you guys have not seen 10 Cloverfield Lane yet, seriously, go out and see it. Click out of this review, minimize it, pause it, go out and see it right now, come back, and then watch this spoiler talk video. If you want to just know how the movie is, I have a spoiler-free review that you are more than happy to watch, and I don't divulge anything. So I'm going to talk about spoilers in this video, I'm going to talk about theories for the future, just theories in general, and things that I think may tie the two together. So that is the longest spoiler warning I can give. We're chomping at the bit. I'm chomping at the bit, so you've been warned. Let's talk spoilers. So first off, I think we all need to address the elephant in the room. This is not a Cloverfield sequel. This is in the same universe as Cloverfield, and the reason why I say that, the best way I put it with some of my friends, is when they ask me for details after they saw the movie. They're like, man, I'm not sure how this fits into the Cloverfield universe. I mean, it feels kind of the same, which yes, that is one of the big emphasis. This is like the BioShock Infinite to BioShock. And so they might be in the same universe, and they are, but there's not really that many immediate linking ties. But here's how I explain it to people. This is sort of the Mothra standalone film. So the first one, Cloverfield, J.J. Abrams wanted America's Godzilla. So this one, being a blood relative, there are some similarities, but it's a different monster, which means that we are getting sort of like a Mothra standalone, and they've talked about how they want to build this Cloververse, like how there's a Godzilla universe. This is essentially the Mothra standalone installment. So while Mary Elizabeth Winstead is driving in her car to get away from her boyfriend, they talk about the blackouts happening all over the southeastern region, and that is an immediate tie to Cloverfield, if you ask me, in the sense that when the Cloverfield monster first appeared and capsized the boat in New York Harbor, there was a mass blackout in New York. I've heard other people say there was a radio broadcast that said that New York, or something along those lines, that major city populaces were blacked out. I've seen the film multiple times now. I did not catch that, other than the SOS at the end that they're fighting back, but they never really say New York or anything like that. So I don't think that that was as close of a tie as people are thinking it is. In terms of the monster itself, why did no one really reference the first Cloverfield that much? Well, the reason being, if this is in the same universe, Cloverfield was supposed to be kind of a parallel to 9/11. So, if you think about it, we don't really bring up 9/11 every single day, do we? Or for some people who were younger at the time, who didn't really experience it, it's not something that's really prevalent in their head. It's something that happened, but it's not that prevalent. Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character, we never really get an age on her, but you can assume she's in her early 20s, and maybe they were in New Orleans. New York is where the monster happened, so it may not be all that prevalent if it's 8 years later. One of the clever ties I did find that wasn't really a connecting link in terms of same universe, just kind of a little Easter egg, is the time frame. I thought that was a really clever thing, is around the time that she checks her phone is around 6:22, I believe it was, or 6:29, and the first Cloverfield, when Rob and them, when the Hammer Down Protocol starts to happen, it's 6:22 a.m. So there's that time parallel. That's just me loving numbers. If you ever watch my short films, I throw the number 4 in everywhere because I just think that the number 4 is kind of cool, and I made a supernatural series around that. I'm getting distracted. I really, really loved the movie, guys, which is why I have to break all this down for you. And then now we're at the meat of it, but I had to kind of get those sort of random Easter eggs out there. But here we are. Howard. Howard is an amazing character. I love John Goodman as Howard. And he has a bit of an important role in the Cloverfield universe. If you really look at it, Howard has worked for the Navy, but he worked on satellites, and that is something that's the key there, because at the end of Cloverfield 1, when the satellite was crashing down, that's what woke up the monster. But he stopped working on satellites a while back, and then started building a doomsday bomb shelter. Now here's where my crackpot theory comes into play. Howard worked for Tagerato. I personally think, my theory is that John Goodman's character of Howard worked on satellites during the events of Cloverfield. Somehow the events of 10 Cloverfield Lane or Howard caused the crash of the satellite. Monster wrecks Tagerato's boat in New York Harbor, proceeds to destroy Manhattan. Howard feels personally responsible. He retires from working on satellites, as you probably would. So Howard then goes and sees the damages, and he worked for Tagerato, which means that he would get details on the Chuai drilling station and the viral marketing for Cloverfield 1, that, you know, we woke this thing up with that satellite. This was caused by us. We have some information on it that we don't get. So Howard gets paranoid, and he's like, you know what, I've focused on being prepared for this, as he says. So Howard, out of paranoia of the events of Cloverfield 1, starts building a doomsday bomb shelter. He had crackpot conspiracy theories as well, which means that we need to believe that Tagerato's kind of like the Dharma Initiative, where they have fingers in a lot of stuff, and Howard had some crazy theories. So he'd just seen a giant freaking monster rampaging through New York. He knows there's extraterrestrial life up there because of all of this stuff, or at least it's his theory. And if you watch the viral marketing, when you found that ammo crate, if you found the ammo crate, there is a document that Howard knows of the extraterrestrial activity out in space with the satellites. And they're like, you need to keep this under wraps. Howard's not talking, but he came across the document. Which means Howard starts building this doomsday bunker because this world is about to get a lot bigger than we anticipate. So I feel like the events of 10 Cloverfield Lane, not necessarily Terrace, not necessarily North Korea, I feel like the events of the first Cloverfield are why Howard created the doomsday shelter in 10 Cloverfield Lane. So when he started hearing about these things of the powers blacking out, he got paranoid because he remembered what happened in Cloverfield. I feel like that is a direct relation to Howard's motives. Howard himself, he's a fucked up dude. I actually really love that. That was the creepiest part of the film, which is why in my review I was able to say that I was able to distance myself from the fact that it's a Cloverfield movie, is because Howard is so interesting. Where he had the little girl in his basement, I believe Howard is a serial kidnapper. He got lonely while building the doomsday shelter, which his wife and kids left him for, as they hint in the movie. And that, I really like that dynamic, that he's kind of telling the truth, but he doesn't want to. And he is a serial kidnapper, that monsters come in many forms. He is a monster in his own right because of what he does to people. So he locks people in his doomsday shelter, makes them pretend to be his daughter, he goes to visit them, and then begins the creepiest thought of the movie, if you ask me. Is Howard has a picture with that girl in the bunker, and she's got the Paris shirt on. That was so creepy to me, because those kinds of Polaroid cameras don't have a self-timer, from what I remember. Correct me if I'm wrong down below. They don't have a self-timer, which means somehow somebody, and I'm actually getting goosebumps just thinking about it, somebody else had to take the photograph, which means somebody else knew Howard's creepy thing. And that, to me, is just creepy. And I'm actually, like, my hair, I don't know if you can see it, but my hair is raised up goosebumps just thinking about it. And I thought during the movie when that happened, is it Emmett? Because Emmett was a strangely nice character, and it turns out he's just a genuinely nice dude. But Emmett's character was so nice, I was like, what if he has just been helping Howard in his fucked up kidnapped Buffalo Bill dungeon here, and maybe he doesn't know, or maybe he does know, but somebody took that picture, and that was creepy to me, which means Howard in his own right is a serial killer and serial kidnapper. He's a fucked up dude. who also happens to be tied to this world so importantly. Another thing, with Paris, remember the viral marketing for Cloverfield 1? After the first Cloverfield came out, the ARG continued, and they would occasionally show pictures of the Eiffel Tower, or things in Paris. And that's one thing I never understood, is why Paris? What does Paris have to do with anything? Because they weren't developing 10 Cloverfield Lane in 2009. So is that one of the ties to Cloverfield that they were talking about? Is Paris, because I mean, she's got the Paris shirt. Oh, my daughter's obsessed with Paris. Howard has Paris posters, and in fact, the poster of the Eiffel Tower was the postcard image on, I believe it was 11808.com after the movie came out. That they uploaded like a photograph of Paris, I think it was. It was either that site or it was another one. But either way, one of the ARG campaigns had that exact photograph of Paris on their website after the movie came out. Some people said, well, is Cloverfield 2 going to take place in Paris? And that's one of my theories I had. But I was so just like, why? Why Howard? Which is why I have to stress, Howard is the visual representation of the ARG for Cloverfield. And I think that's one of the biggest things, is that Howard is the viral marketing campaign, which means Howard is one of the most central things to this universe. I mean, he's got his hands in the satellites, he's got all the clues are there. And I thought that was so interesting because I was so wrapped up in the movie, then when I walked out of the theater, just the ideas kept flowing. I saw the film for the second time with a buddy of mine named Marcus. I gave him a name drop in the trailer reveal for the first one, for the first 10 Cloverfield Lane trailer, that he showed it to me, and I was like, oh man. And so I went with him on my second viewing. And he walked out, he loved it, and we both agreed that it was two very different movies at once. And I think that that was the point. They wanted to show the more human side of the Cloverfield world and how fucked up we are as people. But at the same time, they still wanted to deliver the Cloverfield thrills. So that's where the second act comes in. My girlfriend absolutely loved the movie. She said it was one of her favorite movies she's seen. She would ask me stuff about the ARG and be like, so why would they do this? And I'm like, okay. So I loved having this panel of my girlfriend and Marcus. And they just threw stuff at me. And I was like, oh, this is great. I'm getting all sorts of new ideas. And my girlfriend threw out a really interesting idea, which was the monster. The monster being a blood relative. She was like, kind of like, what if that creature in this one, because this creature is not the Cloverfield monster. What if it's almost just like a visual representation of just monsters in general? Because John Goodman's a monster, in his own right, and all of us kind of have a monster inside of us, but what if that monster, specifically, is almost just kind of like a visual representation of monster and fear? Like the first Cloverfield was a monster, but this one is another monster. It's just sort of like a visual representation of it. And I was like, that's really interesting that that's the tie, is that they, like, the Cloverfield monster is just sort of like a representation of fear and monster. Kind of like the Boggets, I think they're called, in Harry Potter. And I was like, oh yeah, because that does make sense, because the parasites. Because guys, you could seriously, someone on the internet's gonna probably do it. A CG swap. So when the spaceship comes down and the explosion happens and it comes down and it drops the weird dog alien and then it flies over, you could seriously do a CG swap and replace that whole entire finale with Clover from the first film, and it would be no different. In fact, the tentacles that come down and grab the car are like Clover's little mouth things, and where it's starting to eat them, and then the roar, and those things were meant for eating people as like a secondary source. There was, I believe someone in an interview said there was, in the R-rated cut that they were going to do of Cloverfield, there was a segment where HUD was like running underneath the monster, and it was picking people up and just starting to eat them. And they cut it because they said that would be really fucked up and disturbing for an R-rated movie. So I was like, alright, so this movie could have seriously had a CG swap and had Clover, like, picking up the car, and she throws it a Molotov cocktail into the little mouth area, and it doesn't necessarily kill it, but you could have the monster kind of, like, panic and freak out, and then storm off. And that could have been your Cloverfield monster right there. It didn't need to be the spaceship vagina. Come on, guys. It was a vagina spaceship. It was like the Mothra of this universe, but at the same time, again, you could have swapped out Clover and this spaceship, and it would be no different. So, even the same roar. They had the same roar, and I cannot help but think that they were thinking about putting Clover in there, or at least, like, a version of Clover, and then they were like, you know what, maybe we should pull it back a little bit because then we're gonna have to explain that, but now they have more to explain. So either way, I think that that was done for a specific reason, but seriously, like, the monster falling off, a CG swap, and make it a parasite, it would be no different. You could have it be Clover. It's not like if you had Godzilla running around, and that's totally different. Clover would make it no different, which means this is literally Clover, but in flying form. That weird dog monster is kind of like a parasite, and with the same roar and kind of same skin tone, it makes me feel like, what if, because Clover was a baby that was born, that was supposed to be a species long ago, what if that creature was put here by the Mothra people? I'm just gonna call them like the weird Mothra Clover people. And because that wasn't just a spaceship, that was a living entity with battle armor, which was kind of awesome. And they came here. What if they put that species here and somehow it died out or something like that, and now they're back to kind of retrieve what was theirs? And I think that would be an interesting theory, that they're like, you know what? Clover wrecked shit. We're gonna come in and rain on your party. As for this, as I'm trying to explain the Clover entity being so similar to the one in the first film, but just with a different form, I'm not saying I don't like the new monster. In fact, I love the new monster, and I would actually be okay with a 10 Cloverfield Lane sequel that has nothing to do with the first film again, I mean, with some ties, but have it be about these flying ship creatures. I would be equally as interested, although I can't help but want a Cloverfield monster, which is why JJ has to know that. He has to know that we all are willing to embrace and accept this new world, but at the same time, you cannot just leave this monster after 8 years of teasing us. You cannot leave that monster just out to dry. There is something with Clover that's got to happen, which is why I keep bringing all these theories back to Cloverfield 1. They said they have plans to tie this universe into a bigger one. So I have to say, I love the direction it's going, I love those monsters, but don't forget about where you started. You cannot forget about that. That's important. And so I'm thinking that if they do a third Cloverfield movie, and whether it be called Cloverfield 2, or whether it be called 10 Cloverfield Lane 2, or the Twilight Cloverfield Zone, whatever you want to call it, it's got to have at least one of these monsters, or even a new monster. I had a theory that this is kind of, the Cloverfield title is about the beginning of the end of the world. That we are seeing the end of the world happen as we know it. And I think that that's important, and I think that that's probably the direction they're going to go. If we get a new monster next time, you know, they made a great monster this time, so I'm willing to see how it all ties together. But since JJ says they have a way to tie all these and make one big shared universe kind of thing, there's clearly plans. So I'm so intrigued to see this world. I've given as many theories as I can without running this video to be like a half-hour-long video, because believe me, guys, I could talk about it more. I've talked about this movie non-stop since it came out. And just the theories, whether it be Howard having that much connection into the Cloverfield universe, whether it's the fact that I had the theory that Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character is going to meet up with Lily from Cloverfield 1. because there is that possibility that Lily was the sole survivor, presumably, of Cloverfield 1. What if somehow she ended up trying to escape Manhattan, get away from it all? She moves to Houston, then the events of 10 Cloverfield Lane happen. She survived an event before, and just due to twists of fate, Mary Elizabeth Winstead and her encounter each other, thus crossover. I think that would be radical. Even then, on its own, 10 Cloverfield Lane is still an awesome movie. It poses more questions than it has answers, but I think the thing that Cloverfield thrives the best from is the fan speculation. Cloverfield is something that's made for fans. Hardcore fans of source material. Hardcore fans of just sci-fi and just fantasy and horror. And that was the most intense monster stuff I have seen since probably Super 8, before they reveal what the monster is with Cooper, which I also have a thought, because of the Kelvin gas station, which had the Slusho logo. Kelvin gas station, what if this is, because of Kelvin, what if Super 8 is in this Cloververse? And that could be another interesting theory on its own, is that the Cloverfield monster, Cooper, and weird vagina moth thing all are in the same world. And that, to me, is an interesting idea in itself. But of them all being in this shared universe. And I don't know. I think that I think the Cloverfield universe is made for the fans. It's a tribute to the fans. It's saying, hey, we know you guys love little tidbits and extras and hunting down the mystery. The fun doesn't end at the movie theater. The fun only begins at the movie theater when we're like, oh, holy shit. And then afterwards, it's me and my girlfriend in the car spouting out theories about Howard. I mean, we have 1,000,005 theories about Howard just being a weird serial killer. I mean, there's theories that I've talked about with the monsters and how we're leading up to a big, destroy all monsters, just all out battle, or things like that. There are so many theories and endless possibilities, and I cannot wait to explore it more, and I hope you guys are wanting to be there with me. So, did you guys have any other theories? I sure as hell would love to hear them. I'd love to talk about them. I grew up watching the message boards develop on Cloverfield. So I want to hear more. I want to hear your guys' theories, if you guys have any. Do you guys think mine makes sense? Or am I just crazy and spouting crap off for the sake of it? So don't forget to like and subscribe. Got plenty more videos coming to ya.